Good golly goobers, is Bitcoin on the verge of a major dumpage, or is it in fact not? Welcome back everyone, I am your host Timmy Twinklefingers, and we have a lot to be jumping to in these short time frames for Bitcoin's price, as in fact some very interesting developments have shapen up. And the big question, did Bitcoin get rejected here? And if it does fall, what key level do we have to look for? Which if it doesn't hold, boy oh boy, things are about to get kind of nutty. Wow, so if you're an absolute savage, make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and make sure to turn on that bell so you get notifications when we upload these absolutely groundbreaking, time-sensitive, critical alerts right now. Let's dump in. Wow, so guys, if we zoom in here to this 4-hour chart, Bitcoin is on the verge of not only the bottom of this symmetrical triangle, speculative symmetrical triangle that it seems to have been trading in for quite a long time now, but it also is at a much more key horizontal level, which is it also happens to be the point of control on this 4-hour chart, right around roughly 34,700 US dollars, right here on this chart. And we're approaching it again. Now, one of the main things that I think is just very key, and the reason I'm making this update so late, when instead I could be taking a bubble bath and playing with my dolls, is that we actually came up here just after getting a bounce at the bottom of this triangle and getting rejected right on these 4-hour moving averages right about here. So that's a sign that bulls don't have a lot of momentum as of right now, and I think it makes it more likely that we're either going to be forming a different long-term speculative pattern that ultimately is a sideways trading pattern still, or the other scenario is we actually initiate a much bigger dumpage than I think a lot of people expect in the short term, but I think a big bounce would immediately be playing out if we actually got a significant dump below some key levels. So another thing I want to point out real quick is actually the DXY is continuing to pump. So let's take a look at that. DXY just recently opened, and you see it's currently trading. It's approaching that 50-day moving average, which is just very critical. If we breach above this, then I think we're in store for just prolonged Bitcoin sideways action over the next few weeks. If we hold this, if we break above the DXY's 50-day moving average and hold this, then ultimately I think is what's going to happen is we're going to have potentially a short-term dumpage, ultimately culminating in a sideways trading, which I think would last a little longer. And for people that are interested in altcoins, we could initiate some sort of alt season as well. But what we notice, if we take a look here, Ethereum is actually moving to the downside. A lot of these top alts are actually starting to lose a little value now as well, as we see the momentum shift for Bitcoin. And for good reason. I think we're actually kind of in a critical zone in the next day or two. Specifically right where we're at right now is a pretty critical zone. And as well, if we go to this daily chart, you can see another reason I believe this is a very critical zone is because now we're testing this 21-day moving average again. So as you can see here, we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is our 5th day of either wicking or having a lot of price action right at this 21-day moving average, which is again showing weakness, showing that we could actually breach below this. Some sort of quick flash crash, if you will, becomes more likely. I think within the next 12 hours. I think this is actually going to be, this is one of those moments where you can tell price action might get a little jittery, a little rigid in the very short term. So very important to note, if we would come lower, then again, ultimately I think that's really healthy for Bitcoin. Obviously, if we take a look on the weekly chart, Bitcoin is incredibly still high up on this chart. And even the RSI tells that perfectly. How high up we are on this RSI is wild. Where we bounced in the last bull cycle when we were doing very similar moves as we were breaking new all-time highs, entering into price discovery. When that happened the last time, we would run up to basically the 85 line and then ultimately pull back to like the 54, 55 line on this weekly chart. And as you can see, guys, we've been nowhere near that. We were trading at 95, not 85, and we had a bounce right around the 84 before we blasted up to 95. So again, on some of these longer term charts, again, it would be really healthy if Bitcoin continued to consolidate or even had another pretty substantial dump. If Bitcoin did have another 10, 15% dump in the next 24 hours, that actually, again, wouldn't be bad for the market. It would be drastic. I know a lot of people would be panicking. And in fact, yeah, it looks like we're actually getting it to play out a little bit as I'm recording. So that's always interesting to see here. So 35,000 is what we're testing right now, very key level. Again, big level we're looking for though is 34,000. We're looking to see if we breach past 34,000, which again, point of control here on the hourly chart is exactly right about 34,000. But ultimately this key range from about 35,500 to about 34,500, so that $1,000 range is a very key bounce zone that Bitcoin has been bouncing in. But I'm going to be honest, the fact that we've gotten rejected so early on in this pattern, especially after we have just gotten another key bounce here, the momentum heavily looks to be swinging to the downside. So at this point, if we're talking about like how confident are you in moves, at this point, this looks short term. Looks like some short term downside is very, very obvious at this point, very clear. If we go to the 6-hour chart though, you can see we still have some very key levels. Again, holding the $34,000 becomes key here. If we break below 34,000 US dollars, then we can start to see that type of flash move, right? That's where I think the price action will get very rigid, and it can drop a lot quicker. But as you can see, we're not there quite yet. It'll be very interesting to see what happens over the next few 6-hour candles, and especially just over the next like 3 or 4 hours here. Because I'm really curious to see if Bitcoin continues to hold this level. Very, very key to be holding where we currently are. And if we break through this speculative pattern here, if we break below 34 and 35, then we have completely really kind of shattered this type of pattern. It's always likely we could re-enter it, even if we do have a pretty big wick, but if it bounces pretty quick, then nothing too crazy. But ideally, what I'm looking for, and this actually is kind of obvious because it's a huge level, but it lines up with a lot of my targets on a few different time frames and a few different charts. But breaking below 34, we could have a quick flash crash down to about 30,000 US dollars again. So that's not out of the cards. If we do break below that $34,000 level, again, right down to 30,000, I think 32. 32 is another level I'm looking at in the short term. So it's not going to immediately, I don't think it would immediately go down to 30K, but I think it is kind of likely that if we do breach 34, we could see a move down to 30,000 US dollars. All of that being said, in the wider context, this is healthy for Bitcoin. If I had my choice, I would personally want Bitcoin to pull back for another two or 3 weeks. So I personally would like to see Bitcoin pull back for another 2 or 3 weeks. The market doesn't care what I want, but ideally, guys, some people might be panicking. In fact, I posted a video yesterday about how bullish I was on Bitcoin and Ethereum, and Bitcoin went down like $1,000, and some new people in the space were saying like, oh, Bitcoin's crashing, Bitcoin's crashing. It wasn't crashing at all whatsoever. We bounced right at about 34K last night. That is not a crash in Bitcoin. And in fact, if we do get a more prolonged pullback, say down to $30,000 over the next week, or if that's maybe where we stabilize around 30,000, guys, that's not bearish either. That is not bearish at all. But the main thing to take away here is this 21-day. If this is going to hold, it's looking very weak right now, to be honest. But yeah, then the next big thing is right around that $32,000 level, like I said a few minutes ago. It's also a very, very key long-term fib level. We've been trading basically between 32 and 40K for the entire year of 2021 so far. So yeah, basically what I'm looking for. If we breach the 21-day, 32 is the target. If we breach 32, which I don't see as being very likely, I could see us putting in another new low around 32, a higher low around 32. Very similar situation to like we saw here, like a wick, maybe a wick down to 32. So that's ideally what I'm looking for. And then we have 30K as well. But again, I would be pretty shocked if we did break 30K this quick. But if we entered more of a long-term downtrend over the next 2 weeks, then it is possible. That is more likely. But again, it's still too early on to assume that much. That's too much assuming in the charts and too long of a time span to assume. But yeah, if we break below this 21-day moving average, you want to look for the $32,000 level. That is ideally probably a pretty good entry point for Bitcoin. But yeah, again, always important to watch this DXY. Very curious to see if we get a very hard rejection off the 50-day right here. Right about exactly, let's just round up to 91. Getting a rejection off 91 would be, again, I think it'll be very telling to see what the DXY ultimately does here. Unfortunately, this is going to take a few weeks to really get a clear picture. But I mean, this week we could see a strong rejection off of the 91 level or the 50-day moving average for the DXY, but we just absolutely have to wait and see. Wow, so if you guys are new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe, turn on those post notifications so you get updated about these absolutely savage alerts. Oh, by the way, make sure to leave your comment for the hardware wallet or access to T4. We'll pick the winner in the next webisode. I have to remember to do that. And yeah, if you're interested in trading, make sure to take advantage of our Bybit deposit bonuses below if you have experience and want to support the channel. Up to an additional $620 limited time on Bybit. Some very good opportunities there. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what Bitcoin does over the next few hours.